Good evening, everyone. We are now in chapter 48 in our study of the book of Jeremiah. In the last few chapters, we have started to see how God has pronounced more serious judgments on some of these nations around Judah. 11 of them in particular. We've looked at Egypt, Philistine, and today we're looking at Moab. Now, against Moab is something which is very interesting because it is perhaps one of the longest pronouncement of prophecies that we have on a nation that is not Judah, that is not Israel. Now, for our purposes this evening, I would like to actually draw your attention to the map that I want to present to you. From the top, we have the Sea of Galilee, and then it goes all the way down, and then we have the Dead Sea. Now, this is a rough map, and I just want you to know a couple of major milestones if you want to take a look. And this is the Yabok, and this is Arnon. Now, what is important for us to realize would be the what we call the geography and the political boundaries at a time when Moses was about to conquer. Now we have this particular boundary here, and right up here would be Og of Bashan. And so if we talk about King Og, this would be his entire territory. Now, further down would be this territory here. This part would be Ammon, and this part here would be Moab. This is a more accurate drawing. This would be Sihon. The area of Sihon was once belonging to Moab, but it was conquered by King Sihon. And we'll read some of these background in the book of Numbers. Now, with this as a background, think of it this way that when we talk about Moab, we are really talking about this area here. So, this area here is Moab. Now, one of the interesting things you find about this particular map is that all on this side, that's desert land on that side. And so it is not a place where people live, but it is a place where you can actually seek refuge. So let's talk about Moab, because Moab is, by way of reference, would be a relative of Israel. Remember in the book of Genesis in chapter uh, 13 and 14, you will find how Abraham went to save Lot. And by the rescue of Lot, the sons of Lot would be Ammon, right here, and Moab, right here. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, we have been told that God gave the land here to Moab, the land here to Ammon, and they're not supposed to take even a foot. So the Israelites were traveling on difficult paths on the desert area. And then when they arrive to this area, Moses conquered. Now, this is an important aspect that we should remember. Moses conquered south, and then Moses conquered north. And this entire area was given to Reuben, Gad and Manasseh. Now, that is what is left. And so in Jeremiah chapter 48, when we're talking about the destruction of the 11 nations around Judah, I want us now to bear in mind a few things. One is God's judgment upon these nations were how they treated Judah and Israel earlier on as a punishment for not helping them, and over the years have been hurting them. So these 11 nations are punished for that purpose. It has nothing to do with any mitzvot or any instructions that God had given to Egypt, to the Philistines, and now to Moab. It is very much that God has left them to their own, but in their own right, they have influenced Judah and Israel to lead them into idolatry, and had their women marrying the men of Israel. Now, this is an important element that we need to remember, that a woman from Moab can enter into the congregation of Israel, but not a man. And hence, we find Ruth being a part of that nation. Over the years, things have changed, and now God pronouncing this judgment, we need to remember the background here is really the Chaldeans. We have uh, we have the number of uh, Assyrian kings that have come by. Then the Assyrians did not really touch Moab. But now God is pronouncing this judgment, and it has to do with the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. Remember, we have often read Nebuchadnezzar is said to be the servant of God in executing his judgment. And one of those nations will be Moab. Now, today's chapter is relatively long, but we will try to finish it because uh, it is all about the same idea, the destruction of Moab. And what is important in this chapter is actually found right at the end of the chapter. With this as a background, let us begin. It says, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel." This is a prophecy, and it is in chapter 48 against Moab. It is something that God has against Moab. It has nothing to do with the Torah of God. It is to look at them as a nation, how they have dealt amongst themselves, as well as with Judah and Israel. So God says, "Woe to Nevo." This idea here is Nevo is a mountain. This particular location, so I just want to highlight, is that we don't really know most of the places. And the mountain that we call Nevo today is found here. It is called Mount Nebo in Hebrew, but in the English, we actually call it Mount Nebo. It is a hill, one of the tallest peaks in the present day Jordan. We don't really know if that is the case. And so I would just leave it at that, that it is still an uncertain location. But Nevo represents Moab. So how is it that Nevo is in Sihon? Remember I said Sihon conquered this area of Moab. And when Moses conquered Sihon, Moab wanted it back, but obviously they couldn't. And so look at the pronouncements. For it is plundered. These are the words that God says. It is plundered. Nevo is plundered. Kiriathaim is shamed and taken. The high stronghold is shamed and dismayed. Now, all of these are places. The high stronghold, is a place called Misgav. And it's not just a high stronghold, it's a place in the mountains. These are places: Nevo, Kiryat Taim, and Misgav. It says, no more praise of Moab. In Heshbon, they have devised evil against her. Heshbon is here. Heshbon. It's a place just north of Moab. Then it says, come, let us cut her off as a nation. So all of these are a satire, I would say, a poetic way of describing the destruction of Moab. That is how the Chaldeans are talking to each other. They are planning evil. Now, by evil, we're talking about the destruction. Remember, evil is always seen from the eyes of the beholder. And so to Moab, it is evil because it's going to hurt Moab. You shall also be cut down, O madmen. The sword shall pursue you. So these things are indicative that God is sending the Chaldeans. A voice of crying shall be from Horonaim, plundering and great destruction. Moab is destroyed. Her little ones have caused a cry to be heard because they are losing their parents. For in the ascent of Luhit, they ascend with continual weeping, nowhere to go. For in the descent of Horonaim, the enemies have heard a cry of destruction. Verse 6: flee, escape, save your lives. This word here is not about saving. This word is escape. Escape with your lives. Flee, run away. So, where can they run away? If you take a look at the map, you would find that the only possible way for Moab to run away is not to Ammon, it is not into the land of Reuben, it is not to run into Judah, it is to run to the east and to the south, to run away from the Chaldeans who's coming from the north. And so this phrase that we are seeing, run and save your lives, be like the juniper in the wilderness. Understand that this is a tree that is in the desert. So if you have a desert area, this juniper tree is a lone tree and it can grow in the wilderness just by itself. Go run away and you can perhaps save yourselves. That's the idea here. Run away from Moab because you have trusted in your works and your treasures, which tells us that Moab is very, very rich. You shall also be taken. And then we have in verse 7 and Kamosh. Kamosh is a god in Moab. This is something that we probably need to remember. Kamosh is a Moabite deity. He says, and Kamosh shall go forth into captivity. Kamosh can't help you. His priests and his princes will be captured. The plunderer shall come against every city. No one shall escape. The valley will perish. The plain will be destroyed, as the Lord has spoken. Now, these words here basically tells us God has decreed that this destruction of Moab is going to be real. The plunderer would be the Chaldeans. And so the encouragement now would be this: give wings to Moab that she may flee and get away, go out and run away, for her cities will be destroyed without anyone to dwell in them. These will be very much like in Judah, where the cities will be gone, nobody will live in them. And so, same with Moab. Remember, this is the modern day Jordan. Now, verse 10 tells us this. God says something very interesting. Cursed is he who does the work of the Lord deceitfully, and cursed is he who keeps back his sword from blood. This is basically saying, cursed is he would be the Chaldeans. If the Chaldeans come and plunder the Moabites and they are not there to kill them and to destroy them, then God is going to hold the Chaldeans responsible, because God has invoked his decree such that Nebuchadnezzar will bring down all powers that he has to destroy Moab. Verse 11, Moab has been at ease from his youth. Now, the reason why it said that Moab is at ease from his youth is that it is likely that when the Assyrians, like Sennacherib, when the Assyrians came, they didn't touch Moab. So they think that it was Chemosh that had protected them. Nothing was there to disturb Moab. So we say this: he has been at ease from his youth, he has settled on his dregs and has not been emptied from vessel to vessel. Dregs would be container for wine, right? Container for wine. As in modern day, they use kegs. This would be dregs, containers to keep wine. He has not gone into captivity. Therefore, his taste remain in him. His scent has not changed. So Moab is like an untouched wine. Then God says, therefore, behold, the days are coming. Soon, says Jehovah, that I shall send him wine workers. Now, this idea of wine workers in verse 12 are men, I think you can say. They are men who would, I guess you can say, they're men who would come and to pour out. So this idea of wine workers would be pourers, people who would pour out wine, who will tip him over, empty his vessels, break his bottles. So this is a very poetic way of saying, well, Moab is very good wine, still in the containers. The taste remains, scent not changed, but God will send pourers to pour out his wine, tip his dregs over, containers over, empty all the wine. Now, this is a very poetic language to say that, well, everything that Moab stands for will be destroyed, and Moab shall be ashamed of Chemosh. How will they be ashamed of Chemosh? Just as the house of Israel was ashamed of Bethel, their confidence. Now, in verse 13, it's important because verse 13 talks about the house of Israel concerning Bethel. I think we should go back and read First Kings in chapter 12, verses 28 and 29. Jeroboam, when he formed the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, decided to place two golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan, right up north, to try to lure the people not to go down to Jerusalem for fear that they won't come back. And that would be the idols that they have been made ashamed, the golden calves. That is their confidence, where they put their trust, their hope. This is the same word, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. And that's the expression, their confidence. They place confidence in the golden calves. Moab placed confidence in Chemosh. And God says, when you place confidence in an idol and it's not God, then be prepared for the destruction that is to come. Verse 14, how can you say we are mighty and strong men for war? Moab is plundered, gone up from her cities. Her chosen young men have gone down to the slaughter, says the king whose name is the Lord of hosts. What this tells us is this is a decree. This is prophetic that God made with regards to Moab. So God has said all these things in various ways in very poetic language to describe the destruction of Moab. In verse 16, it says the calamity of Moab is near at hand. It's coming. His affliction comes quickly. Bemoan him, all of you who are around him, all you who know his name. How strong the staff is broken. The beautiful rod of Moab will be broken. O daughter inhabiting Dibon. Dibon is also one of the places in Sihon. Come down from your glory, sit in thirst, for the plunder of Moab has come against you. He has destroyed your strongholds. I'm going to read this through and we'll just pause every now and then to look at some of the key words. But basically, you get the picture now that the reason why God has been so elaborate about the destruction of Moab is because he is very angry with Moab. O inhabitant of Aroer. Aroer is not just a tree, the juniper tree, it's also a place also near Nevo. Stand by the way and watch. Ask him who flees. Ask her who escapes. What has happened? Moab is shamed, for he is broken down. Wail and cry. Tell it to Arnon. Moab is plundered. So you can see all these are places down here. This is Arnon. And judgment has come on the plain country, on Holon, Yahzah, Mepha'at, Divon, and Nevo. In verse 22, we have Bet Div Lataim. On this one is Kiryataim and Bet Gamul. This is Bet Meon. On Kiryot, Kiryot, and Bozrah. These are lands that's further up north, on the cities on the land of Moab, far or near. So you can see these are cities, some near and some far. But basically, what is being said is everything in Moab is going to be conquered. Now we see these words, the horn of Moab is cut off, his arm is broken. Now in verse 25, the horn represents the power, right? The kings, the power. The arm is the authority. So everyone in power, in authority, with might, they are all broken or cut off. This is an A and a B. God is saying no one in authority will remain. Now we come to an accusation of Moab. The accusation of Moab was in verse 26. He says, make him drunk because he exalted himself against Jehovah. Moab shall wallow in his vomit, and he shall also be in derision. For was not Israel a derision to you? Was he found among thieves? For whenever you speak of him, you shake your head in scorn. So let's bring this to bear. This is Moab, and this is Israel. At the time when Sennacherib, Shalmaneser, Sennacherib came and took the northern kingdom, what Moab did was Moab didn't come to the rescue of Israel. Moab sat there in her place, and Moab mocked Israel. When Moab mocked Israel, God says that Moab actually exalted himself against Jehovah. Moab laughed at the nation that belongs to God. And whenever they talk about Israel, they shake their head and they laugh at God. So God says, "You who dwell in Moab, leave the cities, dwell in the rock, and be like the dove, makes her nest in the sides of the cave's mouth." Basically saying, if you can, leave, run away to the wilderness, to the desert, to the hills. You will never stay in Moab. That is what is being said here. It says, "We have heard the pride of Moab. He is exceedingly proud because he thinks his God, Chemosh, can protect him of his loftiness, arrogance, pride, of the haughtiness of his heart." God is judging Moab not because Moab failed Jehovah, but because Moab laughed at God by laughing at Israel, mocking Israel, and not helping Israel. Verse 30. I know his anger, says the Lord, but it is not right, not correct. This idea of correct, it is not true. He is not angry for the right things. So it says, his lies have made nothing right. The idea of right here, in this case, it is not sure. So not right, nothing right means not sure, not evident, not true. He gets angry at things for the wrong reasons. Against Israel and against God, therefore I will wail for Moab, and I will cry out for all Moab. I will mourn for the men of Kir Heres, O vine of Sifma. I will weep for you with the weeping of Yatzer. Your plants have gone over the sea. They reach to the sea of Yatzer. The plunderer has fallen on your summer fruit and your vintage. Vintage would be grapes, and that would be wine. So in verse 32, it is more of a description of how the when the conquerors come, when the Chaldeans come, this would be an expression of the nations around the place of Moab. It some would say that this is probably also an expression of Jeremiah, but nevertheless, this is a very poetic way of saying Moab is really gone. Joy and gladness taken, nothing in the field, nothing in the land of Moab. The wine will fail from the winepress. No one will tread the grapes with joyous shouting. No joyous shouting. There is nothing for them to rejoice. Verse 34. From the cry of Heshbon to El Aleh to Yachatz, they have uttered their voice. From Zoar to Horonaim, like a three. Now, this is not really a 3-year old heifer. In verse 34, this is, how should we say? This is not a 3-year old heifer. So let me just explain this. This is a third born calf. It seems that the third born calf is the best of the breed. So it is actually now describing all the prime value and high value uh, uh, items of Moab. For the waters of Nimrin shall also be desolate. So there will not be anything good left in Moab. Moreover, says Jehovah, I will cause to cease in Moab. Now, this is another aspect of the judgment. In verse 35, the idea of cause to cease is like placing a Shabbat. It is to rest and not do anything in Moab with regards to idolatry. The one who offers sacrifices in the Bama and burns incense to his gods, there will no longer be idolatry. No more idolatry. Now, this is a consequence because if there's nobody in Moab, then there's no more idolatry. So that would be a good consequence from the destruction by the Chaldeans. Therefore, my heart shall wail like flutes for Moab, and these are all mourning music. They are not joyous music. Like flutes, my heart shall wail for the men of Kir Cheres. Therefore, the riches they have acquired have perished. So basically, everything of value is gone, really. Verse 37. Again, another very Eastern Oriental thinking. For every head shall be bald. This idea of bald means hair shaven. This would be beard clipped, also hair cut. Now, again, I think we have seen this last week when we were looking at chapter 47. An Eastern Oriental thinking that your if your eyebrows are shaven, you are actually humiliated. So the hair shaven is a sign of humiliation. The beard cut off is also a sign of humiliation. It is actually an Eastern Oriental imagery. All the hands will be having cuts, and you'll be wearing sackcloth on your loins. Means you don't have nice clothes. You just have poor man's clothes. Verse 38. Verse 38 tells us this: a general lamentation means a mourning, a cry to be moaned on all the housetops of Moab and in its streets. There'll be mourning, like mourning the dead, that Moab is dead. For I have broken Moab like a vessel in which is no pleasure. This is like saying you take up a cup or a bowl that you don't want it and you smash it to the ground. This is what it says here as a tool that God is going to break. In this case, break into pieces. Broken into pieces. So you can see the imagery that God is painting of Moab is that God is hurting Moab where it hurts the most. They shall wail how she is broken down, and Moab has turned her back with shame. Moab shall be a derision, a dismay to all those about her. that as Moab laughed at Israel being taken by Sennacherib, Moab is now going to be loved by all the other nations, that she is now shameful. For thus says the Lord. God is now saying this again. Behold, one shall fly like an eagle and spread his wings over Moab. What does that mean? It means this is a picture of an eagle flying over Moab. Now, think of it this way: the eagle is a bird that will come to catch, kill, destroy. And so, sharp eyes, not letting anyone go. And this is a picture of the Chaldeans, that they will come and they will descend on Moab, spread his wings over Moab, and will take everything. In verse 41, the town, Keriot, is taken. The strongholds of surprise is coming so swiftly that they will never see what hit them. The mighty men's hearts in Moab on that day shall be like the heart of a woman in birth pangs. Very scared, very painful, not knowing what to do. That would be the picture here. As we come towards the end of this chapter, there is this constant repeat. Moab shall be destroyed as a people. The Moabites as a people will be destroyed. The idea of destroyed will be exterminated, because he exalted himself against God by laughing and mocking at Israel. Fear and the pit, the snare be upon you, O inhabitant of Moab. Notice these are decrees that God has made on Moab. He who flees from the fear shall fall into the pit. He who gets out of the pit shall be caught in the snare. You can't run nor escape from the Babylonians. For upon Moab, upon it I will bring the year of their punishment. This idea of punishment literally means how God is going to visit them with judgment. This is the year. Those who fled stood under the shadow of Heshbon because of exhaustion. A fire shall come out of Heshbon, a flame in the midst of Sihon. We're still talking about this area here. This area here, Heshbon in Sihon, is where verse 45 is describing, shall devour the brow of Moab. Now, the idea of the brow of Moab uh, is maybe we can see this as the corner, the corner of the edge of the face, right? The brow is the edge of the face. And the idea here is like an Eastern Oriental, uh, the eyebrow of Moab is shaven. The crown of the head of the sons of Tumah is gone. Now we come towards the end of this chapter, verse 46. Verse 46 and 47 would be a focal point, a conclusion from this prophecy. It says, Hoi, woe to you, O Moab, the people of Chemosh perish, is lost. For your sons have been taken captive and your daughters captive. This is the first time that they have been taken captive. And this will be to Babylon. Now, look at something which we seldom read. Yet I, Jehovah, will bring back the captives of Moab in the latter days, says Jehovah. Thus far is the judgment of Moab. And so I want to point out before we end today would be this: in the latter days. In verse 47, the latter days is also known as the end of days. And the end of days are generally referred to the days of the Mashiach or the Messiah. And one of the things that will happen when the Messiah comes will be the coming back of Moab to their land. See, I will bring back the captives of Moab to the land, so that from Babylon they will return. Now, how will we know? I am not exactly sure who the Moabites are today, because the people who are in the present uh, nation of Jordan are very much the Arabs that came and migrated up north. Uh, and they are the same people called the Palestinians. Are there any unique people called Moabites? Um, that I am not quite certain. To the best of my knowledge, I am not certain at all. But as the prophecy of God says, that Moab has been lost. If they are lost and then they are brought back, then I think it would be a surprise to all of us when we are told that there are native Moabites still. Now, in my course of work, I have met with people from Mesopotamia, which I never thought I would. I have met people from Assyria, the Assyrians. Are still around, a small group of them. Now, I have not met the Moabites, but maybe one day when that happens, we will know as the events unfold. One of those prophecies that we seldom, if ever, talk about concerning the coming of the Messiah, the Mashiach, would be the return of the Moabites to Moab, not just the 12 tribes to Israel. And so, with this, we come to the end of our session today.